a whole bunch of stuff to get through to make that connection, because you've got twists and changes. It's sort of a bit like a labyrinth to get that whole thing to go. And what the advantage, there are two advantages of it, in my opinion, of having a mechanical action. One is that the musician has a direct mechanical link to that valve opening and closing. And so there's a more intimate, or perhaps a more sensitive action than an electric one. The other one is, if you're an organ builder or you're trying to fix an organ, it's a simple matter of following everything from A to B. And if you take apart a computer, you can't look inside there and see what's connected to what, because it's all microscopic and it's all electric and it's all a mystery. And so these old organs tend to be thought of in terms of, well, you use it for 100 years and then you have to do a lot of work to it, but it lasts another 100 years. And that is can be true. So there's also the mechanism to get the organ different stops to play together. Now, if you go to the deli and you buy some Swiss cheese at the deli and you have it sliced, so you take those three pieces of, I should have brought some Swiss cheese. You take those three pieces of Swiss cheese, and if you can find a way, I guess you probably want to spray it with kitchen spray. Baking spray, whatever that's Pam is. Anyway, if you can hold the two pieces, the top and the bottom, together on this hand, and then you grab the middle piece here and you slide it back and forth, not very easy with cheese, but you know how you get the hole? You can imagine that the hole would line up and then the hole would not line up. Are you following me at all? Inside the organ, there is this whole section called sliders, and it's basically Swiss cheese, and it's sliding back and forth, and it's allowing the tone channel to be able to see the pipe. Now, on this tone channel, when you've got to press a key, it opens a tone channel. That channel is got wind in it, and it might have, in the case of the Brustwerk at King's Chapel, it might have 7 or 8 pipes on it, but each one of them is a different stop. On the grate, of course, there are many more pipes, so that there are, 17 or 18 pipes that can be played on each key. And so there has to be a mechanism to turn all the flutes off or all the trumpets off or on. So that's kind of tricky, but again, it's something that it's tangible.
Well, so, in a funny way, you can kind of say that slider mechanisms are a little bit like computers, because it's a binary situation. Like it's either on or off, right?
That's correct.
Like the old Jacquard weaving machines.
Yes, exactly.
Now, if you really want to make your own organ, you need to search for a book called Organ Building for Amateurs. And the author is named Mark Wicks, W-I-C-K-S. Now, this book was published in 1880, and it was republished in the 1970s, I believe. So you might actually be able to find this book. But it's like the size of a book. Well, it's 100 pages, complete with illustrations, because of course this is before practical photography. Beautiful illustrations, and it really shows how an amateur can build a pipe organ. He has everybody making pipes, not out of alloys of tin and lead or wood, and he has a scheme for making paper pipes. Essentially wrapping paper tubes. And it's a very cool book. If you don't want to make an organ, but you want to look at the most beautiful drawings in the world, there's a book by Audsley, and it's called The Art of Organ Building. It's in 2 volumes. This is Bible-sized. and it has copious drawings of organs. It's a book that was published in the early 20th century. And so those are the two books. If you really wanted to build your own organ, you'd have to spend more time than 25 minutes with me. But the Mark Wicks book would be a good place to start. And if you're just interested in looking at other books, the Audsley book has been reprinted a number of times, and I'm sure is available for not very much money, via booksellers, antique booksellers.
I just think it's such an excellent project for anybody, especially if we're
that's
heading
our
into the cold
project.
season, right? If you're done with all the jigsaw puzzles in your house, you can build yourself an organ over the winter and it'll keep you entertained for quite a while. Questions for Mark? You know it all already.
Where did you train, Mark? With whom did you train?
So I, organ building, there's no place to go study organ building, really. There was a school, University of Oklahoma in Norman had a program which the president just ditched this last year, a graduate study course in organ building, which is really too bad. And it was only 15 years old. But so there really isn't a place to study that as such. Generally, people who want to make organs or harpsichords or that kind of thing go work for an organ builder. So I started after college, which I studied music in college. I got a chance. My goal was to try and get as far away from home as possible, which was northern Minnesota. And the three organ builders that I wanted to work for, one was in Massachusetts, one was in Eugene, Oregon, and the other one was in Lake City, Iowa. I never made it to Lake City because Lake City is even more remote than northern Minnesota. Lake City's famous for its organ builder and also for the sign that when you drive into town, it says, Lake City, Iowa, everything but a lake. They named the town Lake City to get people to move there, but they didn't tell them there was no lake there.
Oh, come on.
This is true. I've been there. I've seen the sign.
It's true.
So I got a chance to work at Fisk, and I started there in '79 and continued for 31 more years, and it was a great opportunity. So that's my so when I didn't work for them anymore, I just simply said I've graduated. Took me 31 years.
I always picture you setting out from Minnesota and you're putting on your big Norwegian boots and just, like Bach walking to Lübeck, that you just struck out one winter morning and you walked all the way to Boston to pursue your dreams.
I didn't quite do that, but could have been. Yeah, that would have taken a while.
It was a pilgrimage, though.
It certainly was a pilgrimage. And my idea of Boston, this is how provincial my education was. My idea of Boston was based on Pierce, the guy who announced the BSO. What was his name?
William Pierce.
Yeah, William Pierce, who had this Brahmin accent. And I just simply thought that, everybody had been in Boston, forever, just like, the ladies from Boston have their hats. We have hats. No, we don't buy them. We have them. So, and when I got here, it was, and where I was growing up in Minnesota, the idea of a mixed marriage was a Swede and a Norwegian together, because there was a big difference there. And so, I came to Boston and then Gloucester, where, people had just gotten off the boat and there were castles and drawbridges, and I was just completely amazed, and I'm still here.
As you may know, Bill Pierce is from Maine. He actually is from Maine. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But his voice was so inimitable.
And he had a great sense of humor. Fantastic sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I always love that voice.
There we
I have
go.
a question.
Yeah.
it sounds as though this is really an apprenticeship sort of enterprise. Do you have people that you are passing your gifts on to?
So organ shops have always opened themselves to people, and I'm not training anybody, and most of my work is not in the organ business, but it's still in church music. Um, so when I came to the shop in '79, it was filled with young folks, and as time went by the time sort of the middle '90s came around, young folks, they were becoming, professionals, and so there's been a real sea change. I think that a lot of people that were working at Fisk when I started working there were, if they hadn't been there, they would have been, hippies or something like that. But we don't have any hippies now. I mean, maybe that will change, but you see most of the complexion of most of these organ shops is very different from when I was young.
So it's always interesting to observe, organ builders in their natural habitat, because it's so many different things, in addition to the things that Mark talked about. Part of it is also, acoustics. It's design, like Chuck Nazarian at Fisk is usually sort of, part of he's an architect basically, and he draws, organ design. So there's somebody, and they make these fantastic to scale models of what it will look like when you put it in the space. And then you have all the woodworkers, and a fair amount of that happens in the shop, but sometimes they might engage, external, so to speak, woodworkers to do some special carving projects or whatever is sort of deemed to match the architecture of whatever space the instrument is going in, right? So you just have all of these very different kinds of things that go into organ building. And most people that work in shops end up having sort of one particular thing that's sort of their specialty, but they probably also know how to do most of the others, right?
That's correct. My earliest conception of what organ building was about was based on growing up when my father was he was a county agent, and so I spent a lot of time on farms as a kid, and I knew all about. I mean, I wasn't a farmer myself, but I saw how many things they had to do, how many things they had to know about, and the only thing that organ builders don't have to worry, they have to worry about all these things, but they don't have to worry about the weather, at least, for the most part.
Unless the weather happens to come inside the church, and then you have issues.
Yes. The greatest danger to organs is water. It's not fire, because fire usually will destroy an organ and there won't be any hope, but water will leave an organ intact but unplayable, and very difficult to restore because of all the wood.
So I think that sort of gives us at least a primer, and we may return to the subject in the future. I do, whenever things return to some sort of normalcy, I highly recommend going up Fisk. Usually whenever they have built an instrument, there'll be an open house on a Saturday. And so you can go see the instrument that they have set up for testing in the workshop, but you can also usually take a tour and see where the pipes, where the metal is melted down. And it's sort of like there's a blacksmith shop in kind of one corner of the place, and there's woodwork in another, and there's a whole voicing setup where they tinker with all the pipes to get them to sound just so. And that's how it typically happens on a Saturday. And then that Monday, they'll pack it all up and ship it in great big crates and trucks to Indiana or North Carolina, wherever it's going. And there's a whole crew of organ builders that then travel to that state. And they're there for months and months and months setting up the organ, which is sort of another, talking about being an itinerant worker, right? That you're on location for however long it takes to actually install and voice and tune the organ so it's ready for playing. It's quite the operation. Carol.
How many organs are there? I mean, in the US, say, you know, big ones.
Hmm. Uh, so there are, well, I mean, tens of thousands.
Oh, good.
If you are an organ aficionado, especially historic organs, there is a group called the Organ Historical Society,
Mhm.
and they have a pipe organ database. So if you're going to Boise and you want to see what organs are available in Boise, you can type in Boise, and it'll list every organ that people have submitted. Obviously, there are organs that no one has yet submitted, but usually the bigger places, more organs, at least the important organs, have been documented. So there are lots of organs around, and unfortunately, there are many organs that are being made redundant for whatever reason. And there are more organs in that state than people want to take them on in one shape or form. So there's a glut on the market of old organs.
There's also a fascinating aspect of the whole organ scene is that there are people that are, say, in the Organ Historical Society or will go to an organ builders convention that are really more interested in the construction/engineering aspects of the instrument. I mean, music is nice and all, but what they love is the machinery, because it really is something to behold. And, you know, kind of the larger it is, the more spectacular involved it tends to be. And so people that are, you know, fascinated by that kind of thing will also show up for organ events, and to them I think the music is just an incidental side effect of all of this, but it's really the engineering is where it's at. Ray had a question.
Is there an organ adoption society?
There is.
Okay.
It's called the Organ Clearinghouse.
Okay.
So if you don't want to build your own, you can just buy one from them, Ray, and
Yes,
you can
but
have
they're
it right
being-
there in your apartment.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good idea. The neighbors will love it.
So like pets, you know, it's like a pet. They take the homeless pets. You know.
Exactly.
Yes, and
Sort of
also,
cannibalize them too a little bit, I think.
yeah,
you
people
know, when-
cannibalize them. Yeah.
We
It-
had, go ahead.
On Facebook, there is a group which it's like the yard sale for pipe organs, and you can, if you really wanted to play around with it, there are many chances right here in the Boston area that you could buy some pipes and play around with it if you wanted.
When I was in the First Religious Society in Carlisle for those many years, we desperately needed a new organ. And we had a wonderful group of people who I think went to the Organ Clearinghouse in Vermont. Isn't that where it was?
Yes.
And, you know, we couldn't go and get the Rolls Royce of organs. So we had to get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And it was really a remarkable process. And we wound up with a really lovely organ. But it was a whole artistic endeavor to get the working parts, the cosmetic parts and all the rest of that, and make it affordable.
That's right.
There are plenty of organ parts from all over the place. Yeah. More being retired than built, I'm sure.
Yes.
Sylvia, you had a question?
I just wondered, are there several great organs in the world that are well known and sort of looked to as being the greatest of all the organs? I mean, maybe they would be in cathedrals, or the Methuen organ is huge. But are there some famous great organs or not?
There are. I think that in the United States, Methuen is well known. In Boston, I think the Christian Science, what do they call it? The
Mother Church.
Mother Church Extension
Yeah.
is a big and famous organ.
Yeah.
Oh,
There are also large organs at the place where the Army, the cadets,
West Point?
the school, West Point. There's a big organ at West Point. There's a big organ at Wanamaker's store, which is now Macy's, but in Philadelphia, which is a department store, and that's in good condition and playing regularly. I think daily. Then there's also a big organ in Atlantic City, which was probably the largest organ in the world. And it's not all playing, but they brought back a whole bunch of it. So, there are famous organs because of, broadcasting. So the Mormon Tabernacle is a famous organ. The Crystal Cathedral, which has now been in Garden Grove, California, that has just been rehabbed to a Roman Catholic cathedral, and the organ has just been put in. But the biggest organs are often, just massive things, and there is also some important organs that are beloved not because of their size, but because of their delicacy, as it were. And I think Old West is one of those, one of the local examples of that.
And speaking of broadcasts, when E. Power Biggs used to broadcast from the Flintrop, right, at the Bush Rising Museum, lots of people would come on pilgrimages just to see and hear that organ because they heard it on the radio.
That's correct. But even before 59 or whenever that organ arrived, 58, at the Bush Risinger, there was another organ. There was an Aeolian Skinner there. Mm-hmm. And Bigsy did a live performance on CBS every week on that organ. And that was by G. Donald Harrison, the Boston company of Aeolian Skinner. And that's some of the earliest opportunities when organ builders decided they wanted to play around with historic sounds. And so that was also part of that's what really launched Bigsy with this weekly. Can you imagine a weekly organ show on a major, on CBS? A half an hour organ music on CBS every week.
Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Thank you, Mark. We've talked too much and we've gone over time. So I apologize to anybody who had to run and do something else in their lunch hour. Thank you so much. And please come back and talk to us some more.
It was a delight. Thank you very much.
thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.